Throughout history, there have been stories that capture our imagination. Stories that hint at mysteries beyond our understanding. One of these are the Anunnaki people, beings whose origins are said to go back to the very beginning of civilization. So, who exactly are these mysterious figures, and why do they continue to fascinate people? Tonight, I invite you to sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, and learn about the Anunnaki. Thousands of years ago, in the lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, what we now call Mesopotamia, there arose one of the earliest and most advanced civilizations, the Sumerians. The Sumerians, known for their innovations in writing, agriculture, and architecture, believed in a group of gods who not only ruled the heavens, but also played a role in human affairs. At the center of their beliefs were the Anunnaki, a group of deities who were thought to control many aspects of life, from the creation of humans to the rise and fall of empires. The Anunnaki were more than just gods in the Sumerian worldview. They were seen as powerful beings who walked among humans, guiding and sometimes influencing the course of history. Ancient texts describe them as tall, radiant figures with knowledge and technology far beyond that of ordinary people. For the Sumerians, these gods were not distant or uninterested in human affairs, but active participants in the world. As time passed, the stories of the Anunnaki spread to other cultures, taking on different names and forms, but keeping their essence as powerful beings who interacted with humans in significant ways. As we start this journey to uncover the mysteries of the Anunnaki, we will explore ancient texts, look at archaeological discoveries, and examine the theories that have emerged over time. We will go back to the beginnings of civilization and forward to today, where the legend of the Anunnaki continues to inspire curiosity and debate. In this first chapter, we will explore the myths, legends, and modern interpretations that have kept the story of the Anunnaki alive for thousands of years. So, who are the Anunnaki? As we begin, the answer might not be simple. They are beings of myth and legend, gods worshipped by ancient civilizations. Whatever the truth may be, the story of the Anunnaki is one of the most fascinating and enduring mysteries of our time. The story of the Anunnaki begins in ancient Mesopotamia, a region often called the cradle of civilization. This area, now modern-day Iraq, is where the earliest known human societies began to flourish. Among these early societies were the Sumerians, a people who laid the foundations for much of what we now recognize as modern civilization, from writing and law to architecture and astronomy. In Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki were a group of deities who played a central role in the creation of the world and the establishment of human society. In the context of Sumerian religion, the Anunnaki were understood as powerful gods who governed various aspects of the natural and supernatural world. The Anunnaki were believed to be the offspring of Anu, the sky god and king of the gods, and Ki, the earth goddess. This divine lineage placed the Anunnaki in a position of great authority, and they were often associated with the administration of justice, the control of the elements, and the oversight of human affairs. According to Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki were responsible for determining the fates of humans and ensuring the balance of the cosmos. One of the most well-known stories involving the Anunnaki is the Sumerian creation myth, where these deities are said to have played a direct role in the formation of the first humans. The myth describes how the gods, tired of the labor required to maintain the world, created humans to bear the burden of work. This act of creation was seen as a way to free the gods from toil, allowing them to focus on their divine responsibilities. The Anunnaki were not just creators, but also judges. They were believed to preside over the underworld, where they would determine the fate of souls after death. This dual role as both creators and judges gave the Anunnaki a complex and sometimes contradictory nature. They were both benevolent and fearsome, capable of great generosity as well as harsh punishment. As Sumerian culture spread and influenced neighboring civilizations, the stories of the Anunnaki were adopted and adapted by other cultures. The Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians all incorporated the Anunnaki into their own religious systems, often blending the original Sumerian beliefs with their own. This process of cultural exchange helped to spread the legend of the Anunnaki far beyond the borders of Mesopotamia, ensuring that these deities would be remembered for centuries to come. As we continue to explore the myth of the Anunnaki, we will see how these ancient stories have been woven into the fabric of human history, influencing not only religious beliefs, but also our understanding of the past. The Anunnaki are more than just figures of myth. They are symbols of humanity's search for meaning in a vast and mysterious universe. The legend of the Anunnaki, once confined to the ancient texts of Mesopotamia, has found new life in modern pop culture. Over the past few decades, these ancient deities have become central figures in various forms of media, from books to movies and television shows. This interest is not just confined to entertainment, but also intersects with broader questions about human history, the origins of civilization, and the nature of the universe. As we move forward in our exploration of the Anunnaki, it is important to recognize how these ancient myths have been reshaped and reinterpreted in modern times. Whether through books, movies, or video games, the Anunnaki continue to capture the imagination of people around the world, offering a tantalizing glimpse into the mysteries of our past and the possibilities of our future. The Anunnaki have intrigued people across different cultures and time periods, but why is it important to study them? At first glance, they might seem like just another group of mythological figures, similar to the gods of ancient Greece or Egypt. One key reason to explore the Anunnaki is to gain a deeper understanding of the Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations. The Sumerians were pioneers in many areas: writing, law, agriculture, and city building. Their myths, especially those about the Anunnaki, offer us valuable insights into how they viewed their world and their place in it. By delving into these stories, we can learn about the values, beliefs, and concerns of a civilization that laid much of the groundwork for what followed in human history. The story of the Anunnaki also opens up broader questions about the origins of human civilization. Some interpretations suggest that the Anunnaki played a role in guiding or even jump-starting the development of human society. While these ideas are speculative and often controversial, they encourage us to think critically about how civilizations form and what influences their growth. The evolution of the Anunnaki myth also provides a fascinating case study in how stories change over time. Originally part of Sumerian religion, the Anunnaki were later adopted and adapted by other cultures, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. Each culture modified the story to fit its own beliefs and needs. By studying their story, we can observe how myths change and what these changes reveal about the societies that preserve and transform them. Finally, the Anunnaki challenge us to think about the broader implications of ancient myths. these stories are not just relics of the past, they reflect human experiences, fears, and aspirations. The Anunnaki, with their roles as creators, rulers, and possibly even extraterrestrial beings, embody questions that have fascinated humanity for millennia. What is our origin? What is our purpose? Are we alone in the universe? Studying the Anunnaki invites us to explore these questions, offering not only historical insights, but also opportunities for personal reflection. So, the Anunnaki are more than just ancient deities. They are a gateway to understanding the early civilizations that shaped our world, the ways in which myths evolve, and the enduring human quest to make sense of the universe. As we continue this exploration, it becomes clear that studying the Anunnaki is not just about uncovering the past, but also about engaging with the present and imagining the future. Long before the rise of ancient Egypt and the grandeur of the Greek and Roman empires, the world's first known civilization took root in the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, specifically in a region that is now modern-day Iraq. This civilization was the Sumerians, who are credited with many of the foundational achievements that shaped human history. From the invention of writing to the establishment of the first cities, the Sumerians laid the groundwork for much of what we now consider the hallmarks of civilization. The land of Sumer was located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, an area often referred to as the cradle of civilization. This region's rich soil and favorable climate allowed the Sumerians to develop advanced agricultural techniques, which in turn supported the growth of cities and the rise of a complex society. Sumerian cities like Ur, Uruk, and Eridu became centers of trade, governance, and culture, attracting people from surrounding areas and giving rise to a vibrant urban life. The Sumerians are perhaps best known for their invention of cuneiform, one of the earliest known systems of writing. Initially developed to keep records of trade and agricultural production, cuneiform quickly became a tool for documenting all aspects of Sumerian life, including their religious beliefs, laws, and literature. The ability to record and transmit knowledge across generations allowed the Sumerians to build on their achievements and pass down their cultural heritage. Religion played a central role in Sumerian society, influencing everything from politics to daily life. The Sumerians believed in a pantheon of gods who governed the natural world and human affairs. Among these gods were the Anunnaki, who were considered to be powerful deities with control over various aspects of existence. The Sumerians built grand temples and ziggurats in honor of their gods, with the belief that these structures served as earthly homes for the divine. The ziggurats, with their towering structures, were not only architectural marvels, but also spiritual centers where the Sumerians could connect with the gods. The Sumerians viewed their gods as both protectors and rulers, believing that their well-being depended on the favor of the divine. This belief was reflected in the way their cities were governed, with rulers often seen as intermediaries between the gods and the people. These rulers, known as priest-kings, were responsible for performing religious rituals, overseeing temple construction, and ensuring that the city remained in the gods' good graces. The Anunnaki, in particular, were believed to have a direct influence on the prosperity and fate of the Sumerian people, making their worship a central aspect of daily life. The achievements of the Sumerians in agriculture, writing, and architecture laid the foundation for future civilizations in Mesopotamia and beyond. Their innovations in governance, law, and religion would be adopted and adapted by later cultures, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. In the heart of the Sumerian civilization, religion was not just a set of beliefs, but a way of life that permeated every aspect of society. The Sumerians believed that their gods controlled the forces of nature and the fate of humanity. They saw the world as a reflection of the divine order, with each god and goddess responsible for different elements of existence, from the weather and the harvest to love, war, and death. At the top of the Sumerian pantheon was Anu, the sky god, considered the king of the gods. Anu was the father of many deities, including the powerful Anunnaki, who were believed to govern various aspects of the cosmos and the underworld. Below Anu were other major deities, each with their own domain. Enlil, the god of air and storms, was particularly significant, often seen as the enforcer of Anu's will and associated with kingship, legitimizing the rule of earthly leaders through divine favor. Enlil's influence extended over both the natural and human realms, and he was often seen as a protector of justice and order, despite his sometimes harsh and unpredictable nature. His temple in Nippur was one of the most important religious centers in ancient Mesopotamia. Another key figure in the Sumerian pantheon was Enki, also known as Ea in Akkadian mythology. Enki was the god of water, wisdom, creation, and magic. Residing in the Apsu, the fresh waters beneath the earth, Enki was often depicted as a wise and benevolent deity who used his knowledge to help humanity. He played a crucial role in many myths, including the creation of humans and the establishment of civilization. Enki's association with water, particularly the life-giving rivers of Mesopotamia, made him central to Sumerian religion. Inanna, the goddess of love, beauty, fertility, and war, was one of the most revered deities in Sumerian culture. Known for her dual nature, she embodied both the nurturing aspects of love and the destructive power of war. Inanna's myths often depict her as a bold and ambitious deity, unafraid to challenge other gods and seek power for herself. One of the most famous stories involving Inanna is her descent into the underworld, where she sought to extend her influence even into the realm of the dead. This myth highlights her connection to the Anunnaki, as the gods of the underworld were often considered part of this group. The Anunnaki themselves, often described as a group of gods descended from Anu, played a crucial role in Sumerian mythology. While the term Anunnaki can refer broadly to a collective group of deities, it often specifically refers to those gods who were believed to govern the underworld and determine the fate of human souls after death. These gods were seen as judges of the dead, maintaining the balance of the cosmos by ensuring that souls received their due judgment. However, the Anunnaki were not just concerned with the afterlife. They were also believed to influence the destiny of the living, controlling the fate of nations, the outcomes of wars, and the prosperity of cities. This made them central to the Sumerians' understanding of the world, as they believed these gods had the power to shape history itself. The Sumerians' devotion to their gods was reflected in their grand temples, which were not merely places of worship, but also the heart of Sumerian cities. These structures, such as the famous ziggurat of Ur, dedicated to the moon god Inanna, were seen as earthly homes for the divine. The Sumerians believed that by building and maintaining these temples, they could secure the favor of the gods ensuring cosmic stability and their own well-being. This deep connection between religion and everyday life was a defining characteristic of Sumerian culture, shaping their worldview and their societal structure. Beyond these major gods, the Sumerian pantheon included many other deities, each with their own unique roles and stories. Gods like Ninhursag, the earth goddess associated with fertility and motherhood, and Utu, the sun god and judge of the dead, played important roles in Sumerian religious practices. These gods, along with the Anunnaki, formed a complex and interconnected web of beliefs that influenced every aspect of Sumerian life. The Sumerians believed that the Anunnaki held the keys to the fate of humanity, controlling the natural world, human destiny, and even the afterlife. This belief in the Anunnaki shaped not only religious practices, but also the social and political structures of Sumerian society. The Anunnaki were often invoked in rituals and ceremonies, particularly those related to the cycles of nature, such as planting and harvesting. The Sumerians believed that by honoring the Anunnaki through offerings and prayers, they could ensure favorable conditions for agriculture, which was the foundation of their civilization. Priests, acting as intermediaries between the gods and the people, led these rituals, interpreting the will of the Anunnaki and ensuring their commands were followed. One of the most significant aspects of the Anunnaki's role in Sumerian culture was their association with justice and order. The Sumerians believed that the Anunnaki were responsible for maintaining the balance of the cosmos, ensuring that both the natural world and human society operated according to divine laws. This belief was reflected in the Sumerian legal system, where laws were believed to be divinely inspired, particularly by the Anunnaki, to maintain harmony and prevent chaos. The concept of divine justice was central to Sumerian society, with the Anunnaki seen as the ultimate arbiters of right and wrong. This divine mandate was reflected in legal codes such as the Code of Ur-Nammu and the later Code of Hammurabi, where the authority of these laws was rooted in the belief that the Anunnaki had decreed them to maintain order and fairness. The Anunnaki were also central to the Sumerians' understanding of the afterlife. Sumerian mythology describes the Anunnaki as judges of the dead, responsible for determining the fate of souls after death. The Sumerians believed that after death, a person's soul would descend to the underworld, where it would be judged by the Anunnaki. The outcome of this judgment would determine the soul's eternal fate, whether in a pleasant afterlife or a more dismal existence. This belief in the Anunnaki's role as judges reinforced their importance in the spiritual life of the Sumerians. In addition to their roles as judges and maintainers of order, the Anunnaki were seen as patrons of kingship. The Sumerians believed that their rulers were chosen by the Anunnaki, and that the kings derived their authority directly from the gods. This divine endorsement was crucial for legitimizing the power of the king, who was viewed as a representative of the gods on earth. The king's responsibility was to carry out the will of the Anunnaki, particularly in matters of governance, law, and religious observance. Temples dedicated to the Anunnaki were among the most important religious and cultural centers in Sumerian cities. These grand structures, often built atop ziggurats, served as focal points for religious worship and community life. The ziggurat, with its towering steps, was believed to be a bridge between the heavens and the earth, a place where the gods could descend to interact with the people. The temple itself was considered the house of the god, where the deity's presence was most strongly felt. The Anunnaki's influence extended beyond religious practices to the arts, literature, and daily life of the Sumerians. Their stories were immortalized in epic poems, hymns, and myths, which were passed down through generations and formed a core part of Sumerian cultural identity. These stories were recorded in cuneiform on clay tablets, many of which have survived to this day, providing us with a window into the ancient world. The texts that describe the Anunnaki are among the most significant and revealing of Sumerian literature, offering insights into how these gods were perceived and the roles they played. One of the most important sources of information about the Anunnaki is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth rooted in earlier Sumerian traditions. The Enuma Elish describes the creation of the world and the establishment of the divine order, with the Anunnaki playing a key role in these processes. In this text, the Anunnaki are depicted as gods who assist in the creation of the cosmos and the establishment of order out of chaos. They are also portrayed as divine judges who maintain the balance of the universe. Another significant text is the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known works of literature. The Anunnaki are mentioned several times throughout the epic, particularly in relation to the underworld and the afterlife. In one passage, the goddess Ishtar, associated with the Anunnaki, descends into the underworld and encounters the gods who preside over the realm of the dead. The Anunnaki are portrayed as powerful beings who control the destinies of souls after death, reinforcing their importance in Sumerian beliefs about life after death. The Sumerian king list is another important document that sheds light on the Anunnaki. This text, which lists the kings of Sumer and their reigns, attributes the establishment of kingship to the Anunnaki, who are said to have bestowed the right to rule upon certain individuals. The king list begins with the assertion that kingship descended from heaven, implying that the authority of Sumerian kings was granted by the gods, specifically the Anunnaki. This divine endorsement of kingship was crucial for legitimizing the power and authority of Sumerian rulers. The descent of Inanna is yet another key text that features the Anunnaki. In this myth, the goddess Inanna descends into the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. During her journey, Inanna encounters the Anunnaki, who are described as the judges of the underworld. The Anunnaki play a critical role in determining Inanna's fate, reflecting their position as arbiters of life and death. This myth highlights the Anunnaki's connection to the afterlife and their authority over the realm of the dead. These texts, along with many others, reveal the complex and multifaceted nature of the Anunnaki in Sumerian mythology. The Anunnaki were not just distant gods residing in the heavens. They were intimately involved in the lives of humans, shaping the course of history, determining the fates of individuals, and maintaining the balance of the cosmos. Their stories were central to the Sumerian understanding of the world and their place within it. Over the centuries, these stories have been passed down, adapted, and reinterpreted by subsequent cultures. The influence of the Anunnaki extended beyond Sumer, as their myths were incorporated into the religious and cultural traditions of the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. Each of these cultures added their own interpretations and embellishments to the stories, ensuring that the legacy of the Anunnaki would endure for millennia. In the heart of Sumerian mythology lies the epic tale of creation, a narrative that not only explains the origins of the world, but also defines the cosmic order and the roles of the gods within it. Central to this story are the Anunnaki, the divine beings who played a crucial part in the formation of the universe and the establishment of human civilization. The creation myth, as recorded in ancient Sumerian texts, begins in a time when the universe was still in chaos. There was no separation between heaven and earth, and the primordial waters of the abyss, known as the Apsu, mingled with the salt waters of the ocean, the Tiamat. From this chaotic state, the first gods emerged, born from the union of the sky god Anu and the earth goddess Ki. These gods, including Enlil, Enki, and the Anunnaki, were tasked with bringing order to the cosmos. The Anunnaki, often described as the children of Anu and Ki, were a group of powerful deities who took on the responsibility of shaping the world. They separated the heavens from the earth, creating the space in which life could flourish. Enlil, the god of air and storms, played a pivotal role in this process, using his might to establish the boundaries between the realms. Meanwhile, Enki, the god of water and wisdom, was entrusted with the task of organizing the earthly domain, ensuring that the rivers flowed and the land was fertile. As the gods continued their work, they soon realized that maintaining the world required great effort and constant attention. Tired of the endless toil, they devised a plan to create beings who could share their burden. The Anunnaki, who had once ruled over a barren world, now found themselves as the overseers of a thriving human population. Humans worshipped the Anunnaki, building temples and offering sacrifices to appease their divine masters. The Sumerian creation myth also introduces the concept of divine justice, with the Anunnaki serving as both creators and judges. As the epic of creation unfolds, the Anunnaki's influence extends beyond the physical realm. They are depicted as the arbiters of life and death, controlling the afterlife and determining the fate of souls. This belief in the Anunnaki's power over the underworld is a recurring theme in Sumerian mythology, reinforcing their status as the ultimate authority in both life and death. The Sumerian creation myth, with its intricate portrayal of the Anunnaki, provides a glimpse into the ancient worldview of the Sumerians. It reveals their deep reverence for the gods and their belief in the interconnectedness of the divine and human realms. The Anunnaki, as both creators and rulers, embody the Sumerians' understanding of the universe as a carefully balanced system where every action has consequences and every being has a role to play. As we continue to explore the myths and legends of the Anunnaki, it becomes clear that these stories are not just ancient tales, but reflections of the fundamental questions that have intrigued humanity for millennia. Where do we come from? What is our purpose? And what forces govern our fate? The relationship between Enki and Enlil, two of the most prominent gods in the Sumerian pantheon, is a cornerstone of the Anunnaki mythos. These deities, often depicted as brothers, embody contrasting aspects of existence that together shape the world and the fate of humanity. Enki, the god of water, wisdom, and creation, represents the nurturing and life-giving forces of the universe. Enlil, on the other hand, the god of air, wind, and storms, embodies authority, kingship, and the often harsh and unpredictable forces of nature. The dynamic between Enki and Enlil is central to understanding the Sumerian worldview. Their relationship is marked by both cooperation and conflict, reflecting the duality present in the natural and divine orders. This duality is a recurring theme in Sumerian myths, where the balance between opposing forces is seen as essential for maintaining harmony in the cosmos. One of the most famous myths involving Enki and Enlil is the story of the division of the world. According to Sumerian tradition, after the creation of the universe, the gods gathered to distribute their dominions. Enlil, being the more authoritative and domineering of the two, was given control over the heavens and the earth. He became the god of air, storms, and kingship, overseeing the laws of the cosmos and ensuring that order was maintained. Enki, in contrast, was given dominion over the waters, particularly the Apsu, the fresh water beneath the earth. He also took on the role of the god of wisdom, tasked with the oversight of knowledge, magic, and the creative processes that sustain life, while Enlil's role was to govern with authority, enforcing the divine order through his control of the elements and his influence over kings. Enki was more concerned with the subtler aspects of existence. He was often depicted as a mediator, using his wisdom to resolve conflicts between gods and between gods and humans. This difference in approach often put the two brothers at odds, as Enlil's strict enforcement of cosmic law sometimes clashed with Enki's more compassionate and understanding nature. This tension is vividly illustrated in the myth of the Great Flood, a story that has parallels in many ancient cultures, including the biblical tale of Noah. In the Sumerian version, Enlil becomes frustrated with humanity's noise and disobedience. He commands the other gods to unleash a deluge that will cleanse the earth of human life. However, Enki, who had helped create humanity, cannot bear to see his creations destroyed. He secretly warns a human, often identified as Utnapishtim or Ziusudra, instructing him to build an ark to save himself, his family, and the animals of the world. Enki's defiance of Enlil's command highlights the complex nature of their relationship. While Enlil represents the harsh, unyielding side of divine authority, Enki embodies the compassionate, life-sustaining aspects of divinity. This myth also underscores the idea that the gods, like the forces they represent, are not monolithic but possess multifaceted personalities and motivations. The story of Enki and Enlil also serves as a metaphor for the balance of power in the natural world. Enlil's storms and floods can be destructive, but they are also necessary for maintaining the fertility of the land. Similarly, Enki's waters bring life and sustenance, but they can also bring floods that disrupt human life. The interplay between these two forces reflects the Sumerians' understanding of the world as a place where opposing energies must be balanced to sustain life. In the broader context of Sumerian mythology, Enki and Enlil's relationship is a model for understanding the duality of the divine and the human condition. Their interactions illustrate the complexities of leadership, justice, and morality, themes that resonate through the myths and legends of the Anunnaki. As we delve deeper into these stories, it becomes clear that the Sumerians saw their gods not just as distant deities, but as reflections of the world they lived in, with all its beauty, danger, and unpredictability. The myths of Enki and Enlil, therefore, are more than just ancient stories. They are allegories that explore the nature of power, responsibility, and the delicate balance needed to maintain harmony in the universe. Through these tales, the Sumerians sought to explain the mysteries of life and death, creation and destruction, and the eternal struggle between order and chaos. The flood myth is a narrative that appears in various forms across many ancient cultures, serving as a powerful symbol of divine judgment, destruction, and renewal. In Sumerian mythology, the story of the Great Flood is intimately tied to the Anunnaki, particularly the gods Enlil and Enki, whose actions drive the narrative. The Sumerian flood myth begins with the god Enlil, who grows increasingly frustrated with humanity. According to the myth, humans had become noisy and disruptive, causing unrest among the gods. Enlil, who valued order and authority above all else, decided that the only way to restore peace was to wipe out humanity entirely. He convened a council of the gods and proposed unleashing a great flood that would cleanse the earth of human life. The decision to flood the world was not universally supported among the Anunnaki. Enki, the god of water and wisdom, opposed the plan. As a creator and protector of humanity, Enki felt a deep responsibility for the beings he had helped to shape. Despite the collective decision of the gods, Enki could not bring himself to let humanity perish. In secret, he warned a pious man named Utnapishtim, or Ziusudra in some versions, of the impending disaster. Enki instructed him to build a large boat, gather his family and animals, and prepare for the coming deluge. Utnapishtim heeded Enki's warning and constructed a vessel that would carry him and his loved ones to safety. When the floodwaters finally came, they covered the earth, destroying cities and drowning all living creatures. For 7 days and nights the rains fell, submerging the land under a vast sea. But Utnapishtim and those aboard his ark survived, eventually coming to rest on a mountaintop as the waters receded. In the aftermath of the flood, the gods, led by Enlil, surveyed the devastation they had wrought. Enlil's wrath began to cool as he realized the extent of the destruction. The gods, hungry for the sacrifices and offerings that humans had once provided, lamented the loss of their worshippers. It was then that Enki revealed the survival of Utnapishtim and his family. Rather than punishing Enki for his defiance, the gods acknowledged that some remnant of humanity was necessary to maintain the balance of the world. As a reward for his piety and obedience, Utnapishtim was granted immortality, allowing him and his family to live forever in a distant paradise. This element of the myth underscores the Sumerian belief in the potential for humans to earn divine favor through righteous behavior, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Sumerian flood myth bears striking similarities to other ancient flood narratives, most notably the story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible. Both tales involve a divinely sent deluge meant to cleanse the earth, a chosen individual who builds an ark to survive, and the eventual restoration of life after the floodwaters recede. These parallels have led some scholars to speculate about the possible transmission of the flood story across cultures, suggesting that the Sumerian myth may have influenced later versions. However, there are also key differences between the Sumerian flood myth and its counterparts in other cultures. In the Sumerian version, the motivations of the gods are more nuanced, reflecting a complex interplay of divine personalities and agendas. Enlil's harsh decision to flood the world is driven by a desire for order, while Enki's intervention speaks to a more compassionate, protective aspect of divinity. This contrast between the gods' motivations adds depth to the narrative, illustrating the dualities present within the Anunnaki themselves. Moreover, the Sumerian myth places a stronger emphasis on the idea of divine retribution balanced by mercy. While the flood is an act of punishment, the survival of Utnapishtim represents the possibility of redemption and continuity. This theme of balance is central to Sumerian cosmology, where the maintenance of order in the universe often requires a delicate equilibrium between opposing forces. The Sumerian flood myth also reflects the broader cultural and environmental context of Mesopotamia. The region, with its unpredictable rivers and periodic flooding, would have made the concept of a great deluge both a relatable and a potent symbol for the ancient Sumerians. The story serves as a reminder of the fragility of life and the need for humans to live in harmony with the forces of nature, which the Anunnaki represented. As we explore the flood myth and its connections to the Anunnaki, it becomes clear that these stories were more than just explanations for natural disasters. They were allegories for the human condition, illustrating the vulnerabilities, responsibilities, and potential for resilience that define the human experience. The enduring legacy of these myths lies in their ability to convey timeless truths about the relationship between humanity and the divine. While the epic tales of creation and the Great Flood are among the most well-known stories associated with the Anunnaki, there are many other legends that reveal the complexity and depth of these ancient deities. These lesser-known tales provide further insight into the roles the Anunnaki played in Sumerian society, their interactions with humans, and the moral and philosophical questions that these stories sought to address. One such tale involves the god Nergal, a deity who is often associated with war, disease, and the underworld. Nergal, though not always included among the primary Anunnaki, played a crucial role in Sumerian mythology as one of the underworld's rulers. According to the myth, Nergal was initially a god of war and pestilence, feared by mortals and revered for his destructive power. However, he later became associated with the underworld after a fateful encounter with Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. The story begins when the gods, seeking to maintain the balance between the heavens, earth, and underworld, decided that Ereshkigal needed a consort to share her burdens in the land of the dead. Nergal was chosen for this task, but being a god of war, he was reluctant to take on such a grim responsibility. Despite his initial resistance, Nergal was eventually convinced to journey to the underworld, where he met Ereshkigal. The two deities were initially at odds, their encounter marked by tension and conflict. However, as the story progresses, Nergal and Ereshkigal come to an understanding, and Nergal takes his place beside her as a ruler of the underworld. This tale is significant not only because it expands the pantheon of the Anunnaki, but also because it explores themes of power, responsibility, and the inevitability of death. Nergal's transformation from a god of destruction to a ruler of the dead reflects the Sumerian belief in the dual nature of the divine. Gods could be both protectors and destroyers, capable of bringing both life and death. The story also underscores the importance of balance in Sumerian cosmology, with Nergal's acceptance of his role in the underworld symbolizing the acceptance of death as a natural and necessary part of existence. Another intriguing tale involves the goddess Inanna, also known as Ishtar in later Mesopotamian cultures. Inanna was one of the most powerful and complex deities in the Sumerian pantheon, associated with love, beauty, fertility, and war. Her stories often depict her as a bold and ambitious figure, unafraid to challenge other gods and pursue her own goals. One of the most famous myths about Inanna is her descent into the underworld, a journey that highlights her connection to the Anunnaki and her dual nature as both a life giver and a harbinger of death. In the myth, Inanna decides to visit the underworld, the domain of her sister Ereshkigal. Before embarking on her journey, she instructs her loyal servant Ninshubur to seek help from the gods if she does not return. As Inanna descends through the 7 gates of the underworld, she is stripped of her divine powers and garments, symbolizing the shedding of her earthly authority. When she finally stands before Ereshkigal, Inanna is judged and sentenced to death, her lifeless body hung on a hook in the underworld. Ninshubur, following Inanna's instructions, pleads with the gods to save her mistress. Enki, the god of wisdom, eventually intervenes, creating 2 creatures that can enter the underworld and revive Inanna. The creatures successfully resurrect Inanna, and she returns to the land of the living, but not without consequences. To escape the underworld, Inanna must provide a replacement, and she chooses her husband, Dumuzi, who takes her place in the realm of the dead for part of each year. This story is often interpreted as an explanation for the cycle of seasons, with Dumuzi's time in the underworld representing the barren months of winter. The myth of Inanna's descent is rich in symbolism and offers insights into Sumerian views on life, death, and rebirth. It also highlights the interconnectedness of the Anunnaki, with Inanna's fate ultimately tied to the decisions and actions of other gods like Enki and Ereshkigal. Through this story, we see the Anunnaki not just as individual deities with distinct domains, but as a network of divine beings whose actions and relationships shape the world. Other lesser-known tales, such as the adventures of the hero Gilgamesh and his encounters with the Anunnaki, further illustrate the gods' influence on human affairs. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero's quest for immortality leads him to seek out Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood, and confront the realities of life, death, and the limits of human power. The Anunnaki, though not always directly involved, are ever present as the forces that govern the fate of humanity. These stories, while diverse in their themes and characters, all contribute to a deeper understanding of the Anunnaki and their role in Sumerian religion and culture. They reveal the complexity of the Sumerian pantheon and the ways in which these ancient myths were used to explain the mysteries of existence. The Anunnaki, through these tales, emerged not just as gods to be worshipped, but as symbols of the fundamental forces that shape the world and the human experience